When the COVID-19 pandemic started, the MIT Physics Department implemented an online mentorship program for students in a large first-year electromagnetism class required of all MIT undergraduates, regardless of their major. I was one of the 7 instructors in that class and had recently completed service as co-chair of the Team Up task force. So I knew how we at predominantly white institutions can marginalize African-American and other students. I also knew about effective practices to support student success, including Team Up recommendations 3A and 3B on mentoring. In the past, when I had discussed a peer mentorship program with colleagues, few were interested. The shock of the pandemic changed that, and the prior discussions with faculty made it easier now. I pressed hard on this as an emergency response, and my often overwhelmed faculty colleagues were happy to support what they saw as a safety net for their students. The program was much more than that. Ultimately, mentorship can be a means to transform the culture of science and engineering education. A brief summary of our effort and outcomes is this. 88 students out of 769 total in the physics class met weekly for up to an hour each with one of 23 mentors who were mostly more advanced undergraduates paid for their efforts, but also included some staff and faculty. The mentors were trained using parts of the Team Up report and related materials, and they were prepared to offer both academic and personal support. Most mentor-mentee pairings involve both kinds of support. Mentoring differs from tutoring. Each mentor had several mentees. I, for example, had 8. The mentees and mentors both included Black undergraduate men and women. However, we didn't use race or gender in selection of mentors and mentees or in the program assessment. We did, however, discuss racialized constructs and systemic oppression in their training. The academic performance of mentored students generally improved over the semester and improved markedly in comparison with students who did not choose mentoring or who withdrew after fewer than 3 sessions. Anonymous surveys of mentees and IRB-approved post-semester interviews with mentors identified program elements that fostered belonging, STEM identity, and self-efficacy. Strong satisfaction led to a scaling up of the program during the recently completed academic year to incorporate all first and second year physics classes. Other departments are starting to implement similar programs. How was this accomplished? Following a communication from the university president on March 11th, 2020, announcing a major academic disruption, we had less than 3 weeks to design and implement a large-scale mentorship program in a big class that had just finished taking their midterm exam. Our design included 6 major elements: planning and administration, recruitment of both mentors and mentees, mentor training and tools, a process for matching mentees with mentors, implementation of a community of practice for mentors, and an assessment regimen. We wanted to learn from this effort with the assumption that the program would continue and we would improve it with experience. All of this was possible thanks to the hard work of 17 undergraduate mentors and 6 faculty or staff instructors who also served as mentors. In addition, the financial support of the MIT administration was critical, as the undergraduate mentors were paid following Team Up recommendation 4B. The program element that some might have thought least important, a community of practice, was probably the most important of all. Every week, the mentors who were available met for an hour over Zoom to share their experiences and to support one another. Similarly, with the shared leadership model discussed in the Team Up report, we minimized power differences and sought to engage students as partners while being sensitive to their time and personal needs. This was new to all of us. None of us had ever participated in a fully online class-based mentoring program. The meetings gave everyone an opportunity to share and learn with facilitated breakout room discussions that explicitly sought to empower students. The undergraduate teaching assistants who served as mentors especially valued being professional partners of the faculty and staff. This experience boosted their physics identity, similarly to what happens in many learning assistant programs. A faculty member summed it up this way, saying, quote, "For our undergraduate mentors, one of the things that they really appreciated is they were on an equal footing with the faculty and staff who were doing this, and that just boosts their confidence and self-efficacy so much," unquote. An undergraduate noted, quote, "Our mentor meetings on Friday really helped. It was the only support system I truly felt like was there for me in remote learning, and was a community I knew I would see every week, and that we got to work on something we cared about together and support one another, end quote. One of the elements of learning assistant programs we were unable to implement in 3 weeks, but did so last fall, was a series of interactive sessions on pedagogy taught by experts who also were paid. Pedagogy workshops were valued by all mentors, regardless of experience, and they helped set a new norm for the department as we seek to raise the knowledge of educational awareness and practice by our faculty. Now for some details of the program and its outcome. That first semester, we implemented the program using the personnel already involved in teaching the in-person version. About 1/4 of the undergraduate TAs and faculty teaching the class accepted our invitation to become mentors. You don't need everyone to buy into such an effort for it to succeed. We recruited mentees in 2 stages. The first advertisement was directed to students who scored below 70% on the midterm exam, which was about the class average. This netted 53 mentees, and we had capacity for more than 100, so we sent out an invitation to the rest of the students just as classes restarted, removing any reference to performance and noting the evidence that students who participate in mentoring have improved academic outcomes. This added 57 more students. Altogether, 14% of the class signed up. 80% of these participated in 3 or more mentoring sessions out of the 7 offered. Determining the impact of mentoring requires control and treatment samples, just like vaccine testing. However, there is no placebo for mentoring and no practical way to have a randomized controlled trial. Instead, we constructed matched samples based on student performance through the midterm. We could then examine outcomes and attempt to determine the effect of mentoring. This is harder than it seems because there are many other factors besides mentoring that affect academic outcomes. An obvious one, at least if you've taught intro physics, is effort. A lot of education theory is built around motivation, as that drives effort. We can't directly measure either, but our intro physics classes have several low-stakes online exercises every week, which we track for every student. The pattern of responses suggested that taking the fraction of these low-stakes exercises that were attempted by students, regardless of the outcome, was an indicator of effort. Without going into details, we think we can plausibly measure and separate out the role of effort in outcomes. Interestingly, participating in mentoring can boost effort as students become more confident and therefore more willing to take risk and attempt more exercises. We have a measure of that effect too, because we have the effort of every student before and after the midterm, before and after they join the mentoring program. The pandemic provided a natural experiment for assessing the effect of mentorship on academic outcomes. The bar chart in this slide shows the results. Look first at the red bars. You'll see that group 1, the mentees who first joined the program, had the lowest midterm score. Well, this is because we contacted only those students who scored below 70%. Many students, for example, those in group 4, were doing well at the midterm and felt they didn't need the mentoring. Now look at the blue bars, which give the mean performance of each group on the final exam at the end of the semester. These bars all cluster around 80%. What's striking is the pattern and the difference between the blue and the red across groups. And the difference is given by the green bars. Those are the learning gains. Students who initially scored poorly and undertook the mentoring showed by far the greatest learning gains. And the difference between groups 1 and 2, between those students who were initially performing poorly and elected mentoring versus those who didn't, was an average of 8.6 points out of 100 in the final score. That is a big impact. And we estimate that without mentoring, 9 students who participated in at least 3 mentoring sessions would have failed the course, whereas only 1 did. This conclusion is supported and elaborated by a more sophisticated statistical analysis using structural equation modeling, which I don't have time, unfortunately, to show here. Our assessment was not only quantitative and based on academic performance, it also included qualitative data from surveys of mentees and mentors and interviews with mentors. Qualitative data provide a much fuller view of the student experience and help to isolate what is really important. This approach was central to the Team Up report. What I learned from the social scientist on our task force helped me to design and implement a qualitative research study of mentorship for this class. Unsurprisingly, the themes that emerge echo those of the Team Up report. For example, the physics identity factor showed up strongly in the experience of mentees, whether or not they were physics majors. One anonymous mentee wrote, quote, "As a result of the program, my grade in 802 increased, but more importantly, my understanding and interest in physics grew significantly. This program became one of my favorite parts of my academic experience at MIT," close quote. In my mentor meetings, I heard similar things from mentees who became engineering majors, as well as those who declared physics. The team up factor of belonging, which has been a major theme in the implementation workshop series, requires some nuance for large introductory classes. At MIT, most first-year undergraduates take this one class together in the spring semester. When everyone is in the same boat, it's easier to find peers to work together with on problem sets. The pandemic, however, disrupted those P-set groups and so much more. The mentoring program helped to restore a sense of community for students who otherwise were isolated under wildly different circumstances, of course, scattered around the world. The first quote shows how important that community was to one mentee. The second quote, presumably from a mentee with a staff mentor, shows the great value in building stronger relationships between instructors and students. This quote is a plea from students for faculty to be fully human. As experienced teachers know, times of chaos are not restricted to global states of emergency. A little care for students as individuals with complicated lives and acknowledgement of the same for ourselves makes a huge difference for many students. The mentors also showed gratitude for the program, often for similar reasons as the mentees. We are not just physicists, we're primates, social animals. The mentor program helped a number of mentors, including me, work through grief and make sense of the world. One mentor described the joy of receiving the email that said, "Bro, I got 100 on the quiz." A faculty mentor noted how rewarding it can be to help others. As more physicists adopt this mentality, the culture changes. Student mentors bring a wealth of knowledge and insight that helps faculty improve their practice. In an interview this spring, one undergraduate mentor discussed the role of introductory physics in an MIT education. I've long been familiar with the role of cohort building in graduate programs. Business schools make an enormous effort to help students bond in their MBA programs. When this particular mentor pointed out the same thing for intro physics, a light bulb went off in my head. Suddenly, I understood that the banter taking place before and sometimes during class was not necessarily a lack of attention or a sign of disrespect. The social bonding that takes place in a physics classroom, like that in peer mentoring, may promote academic success. You might agree or disagree with this mentor's perspectives, but most physics faculty recognize the value of group work and might better promote it in the classroom. Physics education research supports the importance of peer-mediated learning. I hope you've noticed throughout this short talk the interweaving strands of the 5 team-up factors: belonging, physics identity, academic support, personal support, and leadership and structures. Focusing on the factors one at a time neglects important synergies. Faculty leadership and development and department support led to our mentoring program, but the pandemic made clear that physicists also have to know how to provide, directly or indirectly, personal support. The resulting program was so valued by the department that it was expanded this past academic year to include all physics courses, or 11, aimed at first and second year undergraduates, and the mentor pool was expanded to include graduate students. The MIT Math Department is now striving to develop its own version. The mentoring program I've described is not cheap, and funding would be challenging at many institutions, but the pandemic has broadened our perspective. The cost of the pandemic was large. Will the cost of the recovery be even larger? Whatever you do, please think about systemic factors so that you don't reproduce and reinforce existing inequities. In January 2020, the team-up authors knew that the time is now. Do we still know that 18 months later? As Martin Luther King Jr. said at Oberlin College, the time is always right to do what is right. You can find more information about implementing the mentoring program at the website indicated on the slide. I close with some questions for breakout room discussions. First, Have you experienced or introduced community of practices in teaching or doing physics? Does your current instructional context provide opportunities? Can you do so in a way that minimizes power differences and does not overburden marginalized group members? Second, have you considered or implemented educational programs that involve multiple team-up factors? How different would your efforts be if you restricted consideration to one factor only? And third, what do you think is the role of introductory physics classes? What would you say to the mentor who said that building community was more important than curriculum? Thank you so much for your attention and enjoy the rest of the conference.